All right, we'll go ahead and get going. Thank you for being here tonight. This is the second session of our STR ordinance review. This study that we're putting together was predicated from our strategic planning meeting back in January, where it was identified as one of our strategic goals. So today we're going to be talking about building the list for the proposed study. It's a forward-looking study, and we're trying to identify ways that we can make those current ordinance even better. One thing I wanted to stress tonight is I'm personally, and I've instructed everyone up here, to refrain from making qualitative statements. We're going to be trying to look at just ideas, just create the list so that we can go back and build the study parameters so that when we do the RFP, we'll make sure that we're capturing every idea and proposal that's been brought up in these meetings. So thank you again for being here.
So you guys are the star of the show tonight. You know, the primary purpose of tonight is to hear feedback directly from the public. I do have a short introductory presentation, and then we kind of turn it over to you guys. As the mayor mentioned, this is our second meeting in what I've just artfully labeled the 2026 STR ordinance review. Council did resolve to review the STR ordinance earlier this year, and our goal is to identify and settle on a list of what I'm calling functional concerns with the current STR ordinance so that we can take those out and hire a third party to study the STR ordinance, see how proposed changes would or wouldn't affect things, and bring it back to council so they can make amendments later this year. We are trying to get this done well in advance of the 2027 business license year, so hopefully late fall, early winter. So this is settled at that time, so we can adapt our internal processes if needed, and also do public education if anything changes, so everyone has time to absorb those changes before license renewal season starts next year. This meeting is being streamed. The last meeting was streamed. They're both on our city YouTube page, City of Folly Beach on YouTube. You can watch these meetings later, or if you can't make the next one, you'll be able to watch it at home. And also, we've maintained for the last few years on our website, if you go to our website and type STR timeline, every meeting about STRs since 2020 is listed in order with meeting agendas, backup, and a link to the YouTube video. We've created a separate page for this 2026 review, but if you're curious about anything that gets referenced here, it's all online on our website or our YouTube page. You can watch the meetings and see it for yourself. Next list. And just like I said, I'm trying to be very quick. We had our first meeting of the 2026 review on May 14th, and we just did a history of how STR regulations evolved over time and how we got to where we are today. The goal for tonight is to hear from you guys. What are your functional concerns with current regulations? What is it doing or not doing for you that you'd like to be changed? I'm calling that a problem statement. You know, when we do the study, we want to be able to tell the people these are the things we'd like you to help us fix. We will have a few more meetings. All those dates are TBD because they're being scheduled with the availability of council, so I can't give you firm dates, but as soon as we know the dates, we will publish notice and get the word out. So just kind of example of what I'm talking about when I say functional concerns or problem statements. The last kind of really heavy round of STR regulation happened immediately before the cap passed, based on recommendations from the STR committee, and they started with 4, they were called issue statements, and these are just examples to give you an idea of what we're trying to do now. We're trying to replace this list with the new list based on what you guys think about the current ordinance. So, not saying these are what we're going to study, these are just examples. So when the STR committee first started meeting in 2021, their first mission was to find the thing they're trying to fix. And these were the 4 issues that they looked at. The number of short-term rentals in the city were increasing. The fees charged to rentals weren't enough to offset city services. Short-term rentals cause unwanted atmosphere for full-time residents. And short-term rental regulations are confusing and hard to find. I'm not saying any of those goals carry over or problem statements carry over, but that's kind of what we're trying to do tonight is hear from you guys so city council can come back and have a new list of issue statements to move forward with the study. We have been gathering feedback on the cap since the day it passed, since before it passed, since the year before it passed. So we've heard a lot of comments, we've had a lot of public testimony, we've gotten many, many emails that have been distributed to council over the years. If you're here tonight, I hope that this list in the next slide capture 90% of what you guys are thinking about the ordinance. And we especially want to hear from folks whose concerns I'm not gonna say right now. Like if there's something new that I'm not about to talk about, we'd love to hear from you. Of course, if it's an issue that's near and dear that you've already communicated to council, we'd love to hear from you too. So I'm just gonna go through these just so everyone knows that these are the things council is already aware of. These are the faults that have already been identified to council. These are the things people have already asked council to address. They're aware of these issues. So I think it's safe, and the council, if any of these are new to you, please let me know. But these are what I'm calling things the city already knows people want to be looked at. And I'm just gonna go through them quickly. And these are formed in issue statement format. The cap altered the real estate market. The cap was done without an economic impact study. The cap stops the purchase, rent, relocate, path to Folly residency that a lot of folks used in the past. The cap prevents owners whose financial situation changes from obtaining rental income. If you lose your 4%, you can't get a 6% license. The cap complicates the sale of units in multifamily developments. The cap will lower city revenues. Those are kind of the function of the cap. These other ones, the strike system isn't strong enough. When the cap came in place, separately the city adopted a new strike system. Some of the feedback is that isn't going as planned. Rental nuisance or operational issues are not being adequately addressed despite the new ordinance. And kind of the last option, certainly not in any priority order, is the changes to the cap will negatively impact the community. That is one area of feedback we've gotten is don't change it, it's not broken. So I think that has to be listed. And how those functional statements can turn into action items, this is again a list of common themes in public comment today. The city needs to either adjust or eliminate the cap on ISTR licenses. Instead of OSTR, ISTR, the city could create a 72-day rental license for anyone. Rather than eliminating or amending the cap, we could just do it in more targeted ways by eliminating the cap in commercially zoned districts. Within those districts, we could just eliminate the cap for properties in multi-unit buildings. We could eliminate properties governed by an HOA. Again, these are just themes of the feedback. We should allow existing 4% owners to convert to ISTR licenses later if their property tax class changes, but the ownership doesn't. We should allow any future purchaser of a licensed property to apply for an ISTR. We should allow purchasers of any property to apply for an ISTR or 72-day license, rental license. We should allow licensed structures that are replaced to get a license with no restrictions on the square footage or the bedrooms. We should expand the inheritance allowance to allow all future inheritors of properties, not just the first generation, to get a license. We should expand the medical hardship qualifications because some medical conditions don't qualify under our current rules, and those folks can't get an MISTR. And so those are kind of the summary of common themes. If you have a problem with the STR ordinance that's not covered by any of that, please get in line first. We want to hear it. So just in general, as always, council's decisions hinge on the testimony from the public. So I want to thank all of you for coming to the meeting, all of you for emailing council. I encourage you to please stay involved. I know some of you have been emailing for years. Keep going because your ideas are what translates into actions for these guys. We want everyone to participate. You can always email at comments@follybeach.gov, and please come to future meetings. Come and testify at every meeting. Come and be in the room at every meeting. We want everyone to be here. For tonight, we do have a 3-minute time limit for each comment. Please, if possible, just to maintain the flow, no cheering, booing, or disruptions. We want everyone to be able to speak their piece freely without being intimidated or interrupted. Just format-wise, if you'll just come state your name and address and then let us know what you're thinking. It is okay if I covered what you talked about, or if you've already emailed council 10 times, or the person who stood up in front of you said exactly what you want to say, it's okay to say ditto. You don't have to say ditto, but that's okay. So just succinct is good when we have a lot of folks, but certainly please take your whole 3 minutes if you want to. If you could just let us know, do you have a functional concern that city council is not already aware of? What are the things that you want done with the ordinance? That's what we're here to hear. So that's all the official presentation from this end. Mary, do you have anything else to add?
I just want to reiterate, tonight we're not talking good, bad, otherwise on any of this. We're just trying to build that list that will be used for the proposed study. So try to keep your remarks, neutral. We're doing our best to do that so that we can go into the study with an unbiased and an objective view of everything that's being presented. So again, thank you for coming out. I guess now we can open the floor for public comment.
There's no sign-up sheet, so who wants to go first?
I'll go first. Thank you. I'm John McFarland, and I reside at 401 West Ashley Avenue, Folly Beach. I'm here representing myself and Save Folly's Future. First, I'd like to say that the current STR rules, spearheaded by our former mayor, Tim Goodwin, have accomplished exactly what they were designed to do. They saved the shrinking residential community by limiting short-term rentals. Before February 7, 2023, the city had no limits on the number of ISTR licenses that could be issued. Today, we are ramping down to a hard cap of 800 ISTRs. I'd say that's progress. Long-term rentals are increasing, albeit very slowly. Today's new builds are family-sized homes, not mini hotels. We have more accountability and better enforcement of STRs than we've ever had before. Quality of life has improved over the last few years. But most importantly, Folly's population is rebounding after a 20% decline between 2010 and 2020.
So hold on, John. We're trying not to have too many qualitative. Would you be, I guess, your question would be no changes to the cap? Can you, I'm trying to be.
Mostly, and let me finish
Okay.
by saying this.
All right.
I think the cap is a net, what we have is net positive. However, looking for ways to improve the current STR rules to benefit the most residents possible is a laudable and challenging goal. I'm asking that for each proposed change, you and the experts consider its long-term impact. Will the change be positive, neutral, or negative for the community over the next decade? The same question we should have and probably didn't ask a long time ago. Preserving Folly's residential community should be the highest priority during this process. And if I have a couple more seconds, I'd like to add something to the list. We should require noise monitors for all STRs. It will make life easier for everybody, the police, everybody. It costs $25 a month, and it would be great for everyone. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Larry Powers, 423 West Hudson, property owner since 2020, resident since 2024. We did take the purchase, rent, and then relocate method to get here. And it saddens me to see that that's an option that's really not around anymore. I don't doubt that you need an STR ordinance. You do to protect the public health, safety, and welfare. You need it to control nuisances, but I don't think you needed a cap to control nuisances. I think that proper enforcement would have been more than sufficient to resolve all your problems. And if you go on the city website and you read the STR violation spreadsheets, you'll see that out of the thousands of nights a year of rentals that we have, there's only a couple dozen STR-related complaints and very few convictions. You know, I'm not aware, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, I'm not aware of a lot of licenses being revoked. I mean, if there was a real major problem, licenses should be dropping like flies, and it's not happening. And you're not seeing a lot of convictions, so if that's taking care of the problem, what that tells you is you really don't need a cap. I think the cap was the solution in search of the problem. I think also you're kind of backing into this. I think you're doing it the wrong way. You know, they say a camel is a horse that was designed by a committee. I think our STR ordinance is a very ugly camel, and I don't think you should be asking professionals to put lipstick on it for you. I think really what you need to do is figure out what you want to accomplish. And what you want to accomplish is prevent public nuisances and encourage more people to move to Folly Beach, more families to move to Folly Beach. Then you really need to drill down into the data, and there's an easy way to do that. And I don't know if you guys use the Charleston County Geographic Information System to give you data, but if you use the Charleston County GIS, you can, and a good planner will do this for you. They can use that as your base map, and they can give you the location of all the rentals in the central business district, in the residential areas, and they can sort them all by district. And these are all different animals. They can tell you where all the OSTRs and all the ISTRs are. They can tell you where all the STRs with multiple strikes are, and revocations, and where they're coming from. And last, they can tell you where all the second homes that are owned by off-island owners and are not rented are, because that's the number that's increasing. People are buying these homes, they can't rent them and use that option to get here. They're buying these homes as second homes, and I live in the West End. I walk my dog around all the time at night, and there's a lot of dark houses. This ordinance is not bringing more people to Folly, it's keeping people away from Folly. I had 6 seconds to spare. I'm a lawyer, I try never to waste time, but I'll get you next time. Thank you.
Ditto to everything he said. My name is Patricia Stout, and I reside at 1733 East Ashley Avenue. Also ditto to what the gentleman first said about the noise things. My property manager has a noise thing in my home. It doesn't cost much per month, and it makes it less, what's the right word, subjective. I'm gonna read to you an email that my daughter sent to Mayor Chris and Councilmember Doc on May 11th. My children, because of my disability, have been trying to help me with something that was taken from me by the city. I'm writing on behalf of my mother, Patricia Stout, because she is disabled from a traumatic brain injury. It is quite difficult for her to do this herself. She resides at, when she purchased her home in the spring of 2021, it was a vacation rental home. I believe the city of Folly Beach now may refer to this as a short-term rental. The home became her primary residence, except that her vacation management company rented the home on her behalf for about 10 weeks, and blah, blah, blah. Basically, to lower my property taxes, I just rented it out for 10 weeks in the summer, because I didn't want to be here anyway, because it was so hot. And I went other places. And then the city did their vote, and frankly, I wasn't sure how I wanted to vote when the citizens voted. I ended up voting against the cap. But I didn't see it as a bad thing really either way. But then what happened is the city council, I believe in, I don't wanna waste my time, January, I believe in February, following when the cap was voted upon by the citizens, they changed it so that if people were not using their licenses, they were taken away. But the city didn't tell us that. I had no idea that happened. And so the spring after the council members voted that, and I believe everybody sitting here, except for a new council member, voted for this. I was doing a major remodel in my house, and with my brain injury, I ended up having a heart attack from the stress of all of this. I wasn't able to deal with the property taxes because they went up. Sometimes they went down, sometimes they went up. And so one of my family members was dealing with it, and the people who work for the city licensing never, ever told these people that by getting my property taxes lowered, I was gonna lose my license. And so I've lost a license worth hundreds of thousands of dollars based upon the income that my neighbors get when they rent full time. And most of the houses surrounding me, I did a survey, and I said this in comments. There are only like 4 people out of 18 or 19 that actually live there. The rest are broken down pretty much evenly between vacation homes or rentals. And frankly, I have no problem with the people who are renting. I've got them on the other side of me. I know the owners. I can call them if there's a problem. It's easy peasy. Their houses are kept up because they're vacation rentals. But I want my license back. And so far, I haven't gotten any affirmative response from either one of you about it. And I don't think it's right. How can you take that from people like me? You know, and so instead what you're giving it is you're giving it to the people whose parents died. And to make it easy, I just went on the list for 800 people, thought, oh, that way, oh, I gotta stop, I'm sorry. But I can't get that, because you're giving my license to the descendants of people who live here. Is that right? How would you like to be treated like that? And I would appreciate some help. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Regina Anderson. I live at 1016 West Ashley Avenue. As most of y'all are not long-term Folly residents, nor am I, and certainly weren't in government in the 1980s, I thought maybe I should give a little history perspective here. In the 1980s, Folly was in trouble. Nobody wanted to live here. We had no beach, basically, at high tide. It was a mess. Couldn't sell houses. At that time, there were 2 camps among the residents. There was a group that wanted to have significant development to get the money onto Folly. And then there was another camp that wanted to preserve the character and ecology of the island and to work to fight erosion by doing this renourishment fight. Luckily, 40 years later, the will of the residents actually prevailed, and we do not have condos everywhere. We have a county park that is accessible instead of 540 condos, a private beach, and a tennis court. It was not the council that did that, it was the residents. The council was actually in favor of many of these developments. And what the residents did is they had a referendum. Sound familiar? So many years later, the same resident-driven referendum process was used for the cap. And the cap is cap. And I have to tell you that this list, which is great, I'm glad you're doing it, and I'm all for open discussion, but nothing on here is nothing more than a knuckle in the door, a way to erode at the cap. And yes, I would benefit from some of these. This inheritance thing, be great for me. But what's great for me in the short term is not necessarily what's good for the island in the long term. And I would like you to think about what happened in the 80s. And if you haven't read former Mayor Richard Beck's book, you ought to read it tonight. But anyway, it's just a lesson in history, and I think it's important to remember that if we go down this road and erode this thing, so it's not a cap at all, we're gonna end up in the same position that we were when the referendum happened. There's gonna be a rift in the community, and whatever it's gonna happen, it's gonna happen. But I think it's really important to remember the saying that if those who do not remember history are doomed to repeat it. Anyway, thank you.
I'm Patrick Marr. I'm off island. I own 12 rental properties from 2 to 7 bedrooms at 115 East Arctic, 108 East Hudson, and 112 East Huron. We bought these properties before the cap was even something that was known, and we have commercial loans on these that are 5 to 7 years as opposed to 30-year fixed loans. And now we find that there is no market for investor buyers on the island because in a sale, it does not transfer the STR, which is a real problem for us since interest rates have gone up. And we're going to be looking at potentially giving these properties back to the bank because they're no near what the value is. I'd be curious to know what this will affect others In terms of the 2 units that we recently sold, it's substantially below market because there were no investor buyers on the island, looking at the island. And I'd be curious to know how many buyers of property, how many transactions have occurred in the last 12 months versus the last 12 months before the cap, because a large amount of the sales on the island were for investors for rental properties. We invested primarily in the commercial district, which is where we were told that rentals would be favorable and closer to Center Street. And you know, now we find that we have to sell for primary or secondary homes, which people don't want to live near the commercial district. They want to live farther away where it's less crowded. The number of sales and the discounts that are going to have to be made, whether it's by us or by our lenders who get the properties back, will affect all the people on this island and their homes. And I'm sure that it's creating, even though you say, well, we don't want to buy a rental property, if somebody does buy one, that's going to affect the value and the comp of what somebody's going to be able to sell. So it's going to depress the market overall. And so we're in favor. The cap is certainly one issue, but for us, it's transferability of something, especially in the commercial district, that was bought for commercial property to rent out, and then that option is now completely taken away. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Well, this is some people. Kristen Kell, 612 West Beach Court. I emailed everybody in advance some feelings and some heartfelt thoughts about the new residents that I've met over several dozen. Spent the weekend with 5 people that moved here just in the last year. My daughter has a lot more friends on the island. She's actually riding bikes with somebody that just, two girls that just moved here in the last year. So I won't rehash my whole email that I sent out. I'm gonna kind of stick to your request to identify some of the things that haven't been talked about. And some of them might be a little bit duplicative. First and foremost, I don't see on that list, let it play out. I don't see change nothing. See where it's going. I know currently we're at, I think Aaron said 907 recently, and maybe under 900 in the next couple of months. What if we reduce the cap? There's a lot of evidence and a lot of city planners across the country that actually use the 10 to 15% rule, which is the tipping point where a community starts to lose the fabric of its culture. So what if we reduced it? What if it was less than that? And I'm just throwing out counter arguments here because 800 was about 33%. What if we evaluate, through your study, you evaluate the idea of moving out of the residential area and focusing in all the STRs in the commercial district. A lot of communities do that. Study the impact of the STRs that are owned by multiple people, and I apologize, Mr. I think you said 12 over here, but that is one of the things that residents fear is somebody coming in and buying 10, 12, 15, 20, and we have over 70 properties that are owned by a very small number of entities. Study, really the residents in the condos, what do they want? We have a lot of residents that actually live in multi-unit properties. Get their feelings, study it, what do they want? Analyze the migration of people moving to the island. Do we have more residents now? I know we have a lot more voters. So somehow or another find out how many new residents have moved in and how many have moved out, and just see what the balance is. Study the impact on LTRs. I don't see that on the list either. I know we had 69 the day before the referendum, and we have 154 as of yesterday, but we don't know how many of those are long-term 12-month rentals, permanent long-term rentals, so I think that's what needs to be added. Really study the impact of enforcement, where those loopholes are. We have about 50 noise noise complaints. Only 8 of them got a citation. Half of those actually got a strike. Our enforcement, and it's no offense to our officers, I don't think they have the black and white tools that they need. I think the noise monitors might be a great idea, and I think it'll actually help the owners not get a strike because they can prove, look, it wasn't over the number. And study the crime statistics. That's not on the list either. Has crime gone up? Has it gone down? But from the actual rentals, not just the day trippers. And then evaluate really the 72-day limit and how are we enforcing it, and how can we make enforcement better and violations against it to deter all the illegal rentals that are happening. Thank you for your time, appreciate it. All for studying this and getting some facts on the books.
Hi, I'm Kate Peabody, and we own houses on the first block of the east side. And plain and simple, scrap the cap. It has done no good. The benefits to this cap that we see are so minimal compared to the hardships just that you've heard tonight. I'm a CPA by trade. My very first concern when I heard about this was, man, this is gonna hurt families. This is gonna eliminate people's family safety financial net, and it did. I was worried about my family because we have health issues in my family. I'm heartbroken to hear stories like that. I've heard many stories of people with medical hardship, that this cap, the elimination of people's equity, has hurt. I'm heartbroken about this gentleman. You may call us big bad investors. We are families. We have businesses. We are trying to put our kids through school. I've lived in the Low Country for generations. I might be the 10th generation. My father wrote 3 volumes of the history of the Low Country. He's a professor, distinguished professor emeritus of history of the University of South Carolina. He could write you a book of why this is wrong. The history of Folly Beach Island is it is a barrier island. It was never meant for residential full-time communities. It was meant for visitors. And boy, have you walked outside any day lately this week? We have probably the double amount of daily visitors since this time last year. It's unreal. Any issues that we have about livability on this island is coming from the day trippers, which we love. That's why we love Folly. It's for all. We are not a private island. We are a public island. So we gotta figure that out. Work with the day trippers. There's nothing that renters are contributing that is making a negative quality of life for this island. Having a few extra friends for your kids pales in comparison to the hardships that families face when they have to file for bankruptcy. Think about that. Think about that. It's unreal what this has done. Scrap the cap, go to a zoning focus like other cities do. This is unheard of. The amount of hardship that has come to property owners on this island.
Hi, I'm Carrie Rosen, I'm 601 East Arctic. I wasn't gonna talk, but I can't not. This community, I've been here a very long time, and the division that I see is absolutely insane. It's been 3-4 years now, still don't talk to people on the street. There's still stuff being said on the internet. There's still people that we just don't even talk to anymore. And I mean, I see people right in front of me that I have like resentment towards because of a cap over real estate. And being a realtor brings this to my heart and soul, that, you know, these are real people, and every bit of this cap has really, really affected our community. So I really, really appreciate that this is here and that you guys are willing to listen to us, because we feel like we've been just disregarded, and we're very much a part of this community too. Not just our profession, but what we do as residents, community members, parents, just everything. I really appreciate you guys doing this. So, thank you for listening.
I wasn't gonna get up, but I'll just say something real quick. Aaron Swenson, 419 East Indian Avenue. So, we've been here since 2020, full-time residents.
What's your name again? I'm sorry.
Aaron Swenson. I heard somebody say something about kids in the neighborhood, and that just struck me because to us, as a family of 4, having 2 young children, that's everything to us. And when we were first coming to look at properties here, we saw the playground, we saw the tennis courts, and we saw kids riding bikes, and that reminded me of my neighborhood growing up. And that's everything we could ever want. So when 3 houses down, a family moves in with kids, I mean, that's just like, that's what I want to see more of. I have no problem with, having STRs around. I think they're great. I have many, many friends with, that were here, got STRs. I support all that. I'm glad that they have, got in when the time was good. They invested in the right timing, but that's just how real estate is. If you get in the right time, great, you make a buck, and, you made a good move or whatever, but, at the expense of the residents, I think that's where we have to draw the line. And so, yeah, I think that, making a list is great, and talking about, how to help people. I know I've heard stories about people that buy, rent for 5 years or whatever, then get in. Maybe there's an avenue to allow that to happen with the, commitment that you're gonna live here full time pretty soon. Things like that. Maybe that's, something that we could explore, but I just kind of wanted to talk about what the neighborhood means to us, and how we really appreciate the preservation of that.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I'm Sandy Peabody. I'm a land surveyor here in Charleston, Folly Beach. I own 114 East Hudson and 112 East Erie. I've raised my kids out here during post-COVID, and let me tell you, they saw some things on the first block that I really wish they had. So with that said, ditto to Mr. Powers, ditto to the gentleman with the 12 units. I feel your pain and your concerns. I have a real direct request, Mr. Mayor. Part of your one of your items was to study removing the commercial district from this STR cap. I'd like to ask you to include the single-family dwelling two-dwelling residential district as well. So that's a real direct request. That's from the alley to East Second. The other request I'd like to make is that you have them research a zoning overlay that would make 80% of the people happy. Right now you have 51% of the people happy, 49% of the people unhappy. People out here don't like each other anymore. It's really not nice. So a zoning overlay works for the city of Charleston on Cannon and Spring Street in the city of Charleston and King Street where the noise is. The noise is close to Center Street, first few blocks. Let's come up with a zoning overlay that works. Let's put the STRs in the loud area. So with that said, my request is please add the single-family two-dwelling zoning to your commercial removal. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Pam Cappen, and I own a condo at Marsh Winds. I'm very nervous. I purchased my condo in 2016 and obtained a business license shortly after so that I could rent the property through VRBO. At that time, I resided in a rental property on James Island. And I rented it, vacation rental all year and reserved a couple of weeks for my family. And in October of '22, I was diagnosed with lung cancer. And due to my health concerns and the treatment recovery and the uncertainty surrounding the future, I made the decision to move into the condo temporarily. I knew I would not be able to physically continue to manage the property as a full-time rental during that period. And in January of 2023, I received 4% property tax exemption after moving into the condo. Until this year, I did not understand the long-term implications of that decision. when I was told that I could no longer have an ISTR license and it would change to an OSTR. My concern is that if I am forced to convert to an OSTR, that I will lose my ISTR license forever. And because the OSTR requires owner occupancy, I would never be able to move elsewhere and rent a condo again. In other words, a temporary decision that I made during cancer treatment would have permanent consequences. It was never my intention to make the condo my permanent residence. At the time, I needed affordable and a comfortable place to live while I was dealing with serious medical issues. My long-term intention has always been to eventually move elsewhere and resume using the condo primarily as a vacation rental and for our family. As my health improved, I resumed limited short-term rentals, a few nights or a week here and there. I would stay at my daughter's on James Island and would rent when I traveled back to Vermont to visit family. Since then, the condo has never exceeded 38 nights annually. I have always tried to be a responsible property owner and license holder. I follow the rules, comply with the requirements, have never had any complaints from me or my guests. I'm not someone who's trying to change the character of Folly Beach. I'm simply trying to maintain financial stability. I live on Social Security and a small pension. I use the money from rentals to pay the expense of HOA and the insurance. I respectfully ask the board to consider the possibility of exemptions or hardship accommodations, grandfather provision, or another solution that would allow me to retain my ISTR license or revert back to my ISTR when I move. I will continue to be a responsible business owner. Thank you for taking the time to consider my situation. I sincerely appreciate your understanding and hope you can help me find a solution that does not leave me financially vulnerable and to cause me to lose a license that I have responsibly maintained for 10 years.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ellen Stoller, and I'm 23 West 9th Street. I understand that you want to do a study, and I really would like you to choose a well-vetted, non-partial, experienced company, and I think that they also will have suggestions in order to give a clear picture of past, present, and future. I would like them to talk about what happened preceding the cap to now and forward, financial impacts, homeowners, businesses, taxes, fees, license, registration, fees such as license and registration, home sale numbers, how long on market. I think there should also be possibly, if possible, interviews of homeowners, so that they can get a clear picture of where different people are standing. So I live in my house and I rent. I used to rent a lot more. And I was very confused about 4%, 6%. If you switch to 6%, you might lose your license. And I was like, oh, I could have gotten an ISTR license and left, and at least still been able to, financially survive. And all of this happened right around when I was getting ready to retire. It was like the worst timing. I live in my house and I rent, and I love that. I have met people from all over the world, all over the country. And I have friends from that. They all call me when we get a hurricane. You need a place to stay? Are you okay? Can we do anything? It's just been a wonderful experience for me. I've never had a complaint. I've never had a problem. And people know that I'm there, so they're not gonna act crazy. Now, as far as the noise things go, who's gonna pay for that, number one? And number two, I've heard complaints about kids playing in pools, because kids scream and laugh and play and throw balls. So how do you differentiate, and it gets recorded as, oh, it's above the decibels. But how do you differentiate that from just regular, normal life? And I think that is regular, normal life. And something that's horrible. In terms of if you are going to look at crime, I think day visits should be included, and not just, you know, amongst residents, because we have a population, you know, of day visitors. And are we taking care to, if somebody's intoxicated and unruly on the streets, are we doing anything about that? Somebody's, you know, falling into somebody's, you know, yard. If, you know, I know that you're working with the businesses too, so I'm not sure of all the angles with that, but I think that all that needs to be taken into consideration too. Because we have ordinances, there are rules, and if they're enforced, I really think that there can be peace for everyone. They were not enforced at the time. There wasn't even good records of all of the members. I just want to say one last thing. You know, grandfathering in. I mean, I was so confused about what was going to happen to me, and I thought I was going to be okay, and I'm not. You know, so, and I've been here since 2015, and I've been in Charleston since 2013, and I just really feel like people who moved here with that plan to be able to use it financially when they retired, you know, that should be taken into consideration. And yes, real estate markets change and everything, but this wasn't the real estate.
Hi, my name's Neil Brugel, 1702 East Ashley Avenue. Chris, I want to thank you. You ran on, you followed the data. And it's a little crazy to me that this thing was capped without a formal economic study. So it's overdue, but good for you and good for us, because the data's going to lead us to where we got to be. I wrote you guys, or I wrote one fella and I passed along that I'm a free market capitalist. I believe the market leads us. There's time when it goes too much cap, times when it doesn't, and it'll lead us there. So I'm for getting rid of the cap, but I'm in a minority. But I am for common sense. I'm not a realtor. I don't own properties. I don't plan on owning properties. I'm a common sense man. We don't have, what's the goal? Is the goal to get more residents? Is the goal to punish people? I think it's probably get a couple more residents. The ladder, I wrote a 72-day ladder is the way I got the house, because I couldn't afford to just buy a second house like some people do and come once a month, a year, something like that. So that enables us, people like me, to buy the place, rent it, and go, and then move in. I bought in 2013, I moved in 20. So at the very least, that. But someone said zoning here, and I tell you what, that's a heck of an idea. And John, I don't know where you are, but that was your first idea, was the zoning. And everybody didn't really follow it, but that makes a heck of a lot of sense. People can live where they want to live, how they want to live. And that makes sense to me. So I didn't say that in my little email, so I want to say it here. I heard about the noise monitor as well. You know, that's an enforcement issue. That's not an STR issue. You can't mix it, okay? Whether you're for that or not, what's the next step? Put a camera in, but that's that has nothing to do with STR. That's a different issue. So let's be clear on that. Condos, not happening, man. This is not 46 years ago. It's not happening on this island. So we can throw that out. With all due respect, and I don't mean to be too aggressive. I'll probably say that, and that's about it. Let the data lead us to where we are. I didn't mention the zoning. Actually, I didn't come to mind. John brought it up originally. It's the first idea. It was poo-poo. Someone else brought it here tonight, and that's not a bad idea. Thank you for your time, and thank you for doing that study. It makes a lot of sense.
Go too fast. You're next. Kim Yeager, 85 West 2nd. I've sent emails on various topics. There you go. One thing that I realized was not on the list were crime and safety statistics, which I think the biggest issue that has come up in my experience is what I hear from a lot of people is there are warnings. I think warnings need to be logged if you wanna try and break it up into day trippers versus whatever, that's for you guys to decide. But warnings, I think, is probably a better indicator because there's not always enforcement. I talked to you guys about the fire that happened across the street from me. Overall, I'd like for the council to look for a way to benefit the entire island. I understand there's individual statistics, there's individual situations, but you're not the first bank of Folly. You're not here to figure out a way for 2,000 residents to have a financial plan for their future. You are not in a situation where, I don't know if that gentleman ever looked into long-term rentals in those properties. That might have been a possibility. There's no real crystal ball, so I don't expect that out of a study. And I just don't think it's the government's responsibility to go to each individual resident and go, did you read this document? Did you understand it? Did you realize that what 4% versus 6%? Did you understand that if you don't rent for 20 or 30 days, you're gonna lose your license? It's not your responsibility to handhold everybody in how they plan their life. It's probably a tough stance to take, but at the same time, it's impossible to maneuver that many people with any kind of success. I think the vote should stand. Let's stay until we hit 800, then we can look at data and see what that 800 limit that we all voted for, or at least 51% voted for, will go to. The biggest thing I think that's interesting is there's only 151 people on that wait list, and several of the people on the list have multiple properties. So say it's 140 people, that's the only people that are trying to get a rental right now, as far as we can tell. I don't know about these special situations. But again, I just think that warnings need to be documented, and crime and safety statistics. I'm gonna work on a national level, see what I can find out regarding everything from child trafficking, people trafficking, drug trafficking. It all exists. And people think it's not here, and it is. Thanks all.
Gentlemen, I'm Dennis Ashley. I live at 218 West Cooper. In the summertime and in the spring, we leave our windows open, and at 2 in the morning, we had a party behind us. I called public safety at 2 o'clock in the morning. At 2:15, the noise stopped. It works. So I would say focus on the noise in STRs. We have a vehicle to deal with it, and it's effective. But on the same time, at 9:30 at night, sitting in our living room, 2 blocks from center, we hear the noise from the bands. So if we're gonna think about noise pollution, let's think about it broadly, because that's a very real concern. You can stand 2 blocks away from center, and you don't even know which band is playing. And does it really need to be that loud? So that's a thought for you. The other thing I've heard from our friends, the unintended consequences of folks living in a condo, where there's multiple rentals available for them, and they're like trying to sell, and they can't. So I think that's sort of on your list, and that needs to be something to get some attention to. That's it. My time's up. I yield.
I'm John Firstner. I currently reside at 321 West Ashley. I actually prefer the previous address, which was 309 West Arctic. That was the address when my family purchased the property in February of 1965. I've had the good fortune to be associated with this island on and off since that period of time. I can tell you, when we were down here, you think the homes are dark now. You come down here in the winter in 65, nobody was here. I still miss the pier, I really do, all those things, it's changed a lot. My concern is, I'm living the dream. I actually live here now. This has been my lifelong dream to do this. I'm very fortunate that when I had to rent my home, that you folks did not have a cap. Otherwise, I would probably not be here. That scenario is the property pass through, but unfortunately, myself and 3 siblings had the property. I had to go through a buyout process. And the only way I could do that was have the opportunity to rent that, which a number of folks have talked about. That basically provided me a path to where I could be a full-time resident at Folly Beach. The interesting thing about that too is that we went through what my contractor ended up saying, a whole home renovation. And in our conversations with him, it was pretty enlightening. Because we asked him, how has it changed? And he basically says what he is now dealing with. Instead of folks that are being able to purchase a home down here and have the rental income, what you now have are the very wealthy who can afford a property down here that they don't have to rent. They are then tearing the home down, more than likely, and building very large homes. And I would echo what Mr. Powers has indicated. Those folks don't live here. They live in Atlanta. They live in other places, type thing. And yes, as a full-time resident, I want it to be a full-time beach. However, I echo this young lady's sentiment. It is a public beach, and I want the public to have access to it. And I certainly appreciate your time this evening. And I wish you luck in opening this wound, and best of luck in moving forward. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Let's sit real quick, only because I don't see anything. My name's Diane Ray. I've lived out here for 20 years. I've raised both of my children out here. We're at 118 East Cooper. Our house is a multifamily, and luckily because of that, we were able to rent a portion of it and live in it full time. So that's been fabulous. We're grandfathered in, it was great. I don't need a noise monitor. I live there, so I can keep tracks. I think that's kind of a blanket, that idea of every property needs a noise monitor is just a little silly. It's kind of like this knee-kick reaction we had where we just need this cap right now before like enforcing some of the ordinances that were in place. When we moved here 20 years ago, 118 East Cooper was totally different, especially with all this new landscaping and all this parking on the side of the road now. I mean, that's great. It increases visibility for people and more parking, but it's louder. Like first block is now a parking lot, and I don't have a problem with it. But it is, and there's cars coming and going all day now because they've been shutting their doors at all times of the night and coming back from bars at 2 and getting in and making noise. When we moved out here 20 years ago, with our kids, people thought we were crazy. They're like, "Well, you're moving to Folly with 2 little kids, a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old?" And we said, yes. We know what we're getting into. We know it's transient and it's not a neighborhood. We felt very blessed when we got here that we met a couple families that had kids, but it wasn't we didn't move from the neighborhood we were in coming out thinking, oh, we just want a quaint little neighborhood. We knew it wasn't that. We want our kids to grow up on the beach. We want them to surf. We want them to be able to go on the boat. So part of me just feels like that's just, as people have moved here, they're like, oh, but we want it to be perfect in this neighborhood with sidewalks. Well, it's never been that, and I want it to be safe for families. But it also, it's not what Folly was. I've seen these short-term rentals come in, houses that were falling apart, little teeny houses. They're so cute and fixed up and not torn down. I think that's fabulous. When we first moved here, houses were falling down. You can tell which houses are long-term rentals out here. They're not taken care of. The short-term rentals are taken care of because your guests aren't gonna allow it. Where I live, I've had long-term rentals around me. We don't have any long-term residents around my house because it's first block. I don't mind, because if I have an issue, I can call a property manager and, the problem solved. I had more issues with the long-term, residents that were there. That was more a problem. So I really appreciate you guys looking at this. I feel like it was a knee-jerk reaction. I've seen the community divided over this. I wanted my kids to inherit the house. I'm not really worried about selling it, but if they inherit it, I'd like for them to be able to rent both the upstairs and the downstairs if they need to. So just thanks for revisiting it, because I think there's a lot that can be changed, especially with the multifamily units, first block. It's a little scary. All right.
Hello, Mayor and Council. I'm Vince Perna. I live at 305 East Huron Avenue. I'm also the president of the Folly Association of Business. I want to start by thanking you for allowing this process to exist. It's encouraging to be headed towards gathering information so that we can have informed discussions about all of our shared areas of concern. And that's really what I want to talk about tonight. I think what we're doing right here is critical. As you outlined in the process previously, identifying areas of concern was listed before developing proposed solutions, and I feel like that's what we're doing now. I'm gonna ask you not to rush that process because I do think that this is beneficial. We're allowing members of the community on both sides to come and hear the areas of concern of the other side. I think that's an important step in all of us having informed discussions about how to achieve balanced goals. I think that that's important. I think that's what we're all trying to achieve here. Unfortunately, there are some that have a narrow definition of who benefits. If you take that stance, you refuse to acknowledge the consequences and damage to your friends and neighbors. To do that in the name of community is actually in direct conflict with the definition of community itself. Folly community is made up not only of residents, but local vendors, workers, second homeowners, visitors, and since its beginning, it's drawn people from all walks of life who contribute to its character, economy, and culture. It's unfair to dismiss these voices of those who work and invest in this community and regularly support it. So I'm asking that you consider a broader scope of the definition of community because, again, we are all seeking balanced solutions. I believe council's worked really hard on this topic. I can't imagine how many emails and comments you've received. Unfortunately, we don't know what you've heard. We don't know what you know. And I think it's important to be transparent about what you've heard and how you came to these proposed solutions that you're proposing right now. We don't know that. We haven't seen that. And that's what this forum is about right now. So if you are willing to show a concerted effort, take time to listen to the community in a more proper and timely fashion than a 2 business day notice of a meeting. I know several people that aren't here. I'm sure there's many in the same situation. Allow more transparency and time to hear from the community if this is truly an effort to repair damage and heal the community. If I was going to add an area of concern to this proposed solution list that I'd ask you to look into, I do believe that decreasing accommodations for visitors negatively affects business revenues on Folly. And I'd like you to look into that. And please keep the entire community in mind. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, my name is Levi Jackson. A lot of people know me as Lee Jackson, 610 East Arctic Avenue. I'd like to thank y'all for y'all's time, for hearing everybody's input and everything. I lived in Folly Beach since 1971. My great-grandfather, he was a missionary for Citadel Square Baptist Church, and he came out here to Folly Beach and built the Folly Beach Baptist Church, you know, when Mr. Citadel developed the island, and we've been here ever since. But anyway, I was looking at, you know, all the proposals to address the functional concerns, and I know that the mayor had mentioned if we had any functional concerns that aren't addressed. Just like to bring up one. You know, I think all the concerns that are listed are good and everything. But just one concern that I noticed, and kind of a lot of people I know out here, they kind of disenfranchise a lot of people, is, you know, people have lived here for numerous amount of years and own property, and I own several properties, and I don't do any short-term rentals. I have, you know, long-term and yearly leases and everything. I just don't do short-term rentals. I have nothing against them or anything, but in case me or my neighbors, let's say we get old, have to go to retirement home, we do want to change our properties to a STR or something like that, give it to our kids so they can, you know, pay for our health. Growing old, you know, we have to stay in the same line, somebody just bought a house on Monday, and I don't think that's right. So if there could just be a better avenue for, people who have owned property either for numerous amount of years, either lived in them, long-term rentals, whatever, someone doesn't have an ISTR, if they need to convert to that, if they have a vested interest in the beach, not just somebody here making $1 million in a year, and there'd probably be a better avenue for, people who this is our neighborhood. But that's just one, thing I like to see put on the list is, just have, I'm not speaking on just for me, but other people as well, just a better avenue for people who have lived here if we need to get the ISTR for some reason. We shouldn't have to, wait however long, an infinite amount of time. Just like people who did buy a house on Monday, and they should wait. That shouldn't have to be the same way. And my neighbors shouldn't be there. So it's a thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay,
I'll say
Michael?
something.
Going
Behave.
once, going once.
I just want to say thanks to everybody that really is looking into this again. I don't have to tell you how much it destroyed me. 20-year plus living out here on the beach, working out here on the beach, and absolutely love it. We all came out here on a vacation at one point, or a day trip visit, and decided to move here. So I did the same thing, and have enjoyed it ever since. And I appreciate you guys looking into this. I'd like to see, as quick as this came upon us and got crushed on top of us, I'd like to see it taken off of us and let us breathe again. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Christian Woods, 1016 West Ashley. I just want to make one statement. 51% of the voters of Folly Beach voted for the camp. 49 did not. This was not crushed on anyone. This was a democratic process, and I think council is well advised to respect the will of the majority of this island voters. What you're doing to look into modifications that are sensible and address hardships or that's great. But if we hear about individuals that are underwater because of rising interest rates or something like that, then quantify it. Don't make it anecdotal. Because we had an interest crisis years and years ago, and people were under. So is the cause the cap, or is the cause a general situation of investors finding better investments? We should not be blindsided by individual observations. And to the point of free market and property rights, when our house was built, the regulations were that I could build right to the corner of the marsh. Today's houses have to be at least, correct me if I'm wrong, Aaron, 10 foot away from it. So if my house burns down tomorrow, I can't rebuild my house. Property rights ends where regulations kick in. And regulations are most probably for the better because fire brigades need access, environment needs to be protected. So I think you should please consider that. Thank you.
No, let's, ma'am, please. Anything else? Okay, we'll wrap it up. I do appreciate each person that spoke tonight. I appreciate the voices that were shared. I wanted you to know, one, we've all gone into this process trying to look at this with a objective, unbiased viewpoint so that we could look at how we can improve this ordinance to address some of the concerns that are being raised. Being objective gives us the ability to take this to a third party, get some information back so that we can make better decisions going forward. And that's really the whole objective to this whole study. So again, thank you so much for all you being involved. We're gonna go back and distill all this information, and we'll probably come back in a couple, maybe a week or so, and Aaron will advertise that date well in advance. So this is an ongoing process. We don't want to rush it, but we do have some time elements involved with the September so that we can get everything in place for the next year's rental season. So it's not like we can drag our feet on these things. We have to move, but I want to be deliberate and make sure we do it right. So again, thank you for your time and appreciate your involvement. Thank you.